And it's like, look, if I'm going to bury myself all day at work, don't expect to go perform real well in a workout. And be aware of what you're doing, and maybe just do some ice and some heat so that you can down regulate or up regulate and then be able to down regulate yourself.
They're doing breath, heat, ice. Man, there's a cool training facility. Looks like an MMA gym
Yeah.
mixed with a CrossFit gym. But the thing that you've been getting into is the heat, ice, and breath. And
Yeah.
it was a couple years ago you introduced me to the Wim Hof Breathing Method.
Yep.
And I had heard about like holotropic breathing before, and I had
Yes.
done some stuff, one-off before, but that method specifically stuck with me because of how easy it is to use. And so, yeah, I mean that's really changed a lot of things for me. It's how I start my morning. Can you tell us more about
Yeah.
where you've gone with breath since then? Because
Yeah.
it's been a couple yees,
Yeah.
and it's been over a year and a half since you've been on the show.
Yeah. The Wim Hof method is arguably, I think it's probably the greatest driver to get people engaged in actual consciousness or work with breath.
Yeah.
It's such an easy feel, and Wim, his whole thing is feeling is understanding. And here you go. In 3 minutes, you're euphoric and you get to a deep state of flow. You've got this sympathetic state going off, but you're non-reactive about it, and you enter into this special place for a lot of people. Some people it gets very emotional, which just means, hey, there's other things in there that we may need to deal with.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time with Wim, in working with Wim and his group, and one of his top instructors, Casper, who's arguably one of the greatest teachers I've been around. I've spent a lot of time with, so understanding the science on all that, and then actually delving into a lot more of different methodologies, and figuring things out with like the Tumo breathing or the Tumo meditation that the Buddhist monks do, which is where kind of the inner fire thing comes from with Wim Hof. That heating up, that is actually a Buddhist monk thing that's been around for thousands of years and or hundreds of years, and you find paths into certain places and other things, and you learn how to connect dots. And so for me, it's not just Wim Hof stuff, although I incorporate a lot of the Wim Hof stuff into what it is I do. I'm actually incorporating a lot of other breathing techniques into stuff, and programming it in manners to create special effects per se, right? Whether that's deep transcendental things, or it's just, hey, I want to be ready to fucking train and go hard, or I want to uplift myself so that I can down regulate immediately, and that's an important piece. Is I've been putting out a lot of information on the breathing, heat, and the ice, and these are all sympathetic things that we're introducing to people, but people don't really understand that, and I kind of caught wind of that today with somebody asking a question. And it was like, oh, and, these things are a lot like weightlifting or CrossFit or training. And except I'm breathing and I'm creating chemical warfare on my body inside, on my physiology without working really. I'm breathing and I'm creating these catechinoids. I'm getting these catechinoids to dump into the system. So I've got norepinephrine, adrenaline, I've got dopamine entering the system. And I'm saying to my body's going, wow, okay, you're fucking fight or flight or freeze right now. And this kind of goes into one of the theories of, like, not theory, but the analogy of the lion and the antelope, where the lion and the antelope will engage where the lion goes after the antelope. And we cannot tell the difference from either animal physiologically. They're both in a highly sympathetic state. Heart rates are pegged, whatever. There's no difference. The difference, though, between the two animals is the lion wants to be there and the antelope does not. Now, if the lion doesn't catch the antelope, what happens? They both downregulate and go into a parasympathetic state. What do?
Stay freaked out.
We stay freaked out. We continue working and stressing ourselves out, and then we go jump in a gym and we start training our brains out in another sympathetic state. And we made the choice not to down-regulate or ignore that tiredness. Hey, I'm getting tired today. I should probably take a nap. Oh, no, I can't because I'm at a 9 to 5 and we're not allowed to take naps. And, well, none of us here are at a 9 to 5. But the fact is these are all things I'm really starting to push and get out. And Andy and I are even doing some work here to where it's is technology and what we're doing really getting us to where we should be? And why aren't we actually doing the things that we have really been great at, like the work within McDougall that Chris McDougall's done and showing with Natural Born Heroes, things like, hey, guys picking up 800-pound stones. Why isn't anybody picking up an 800-pound stone anymore? We've got some of the strongest, biggest guys we've ever seen in the history of man, but they're still not picking these things up. Why aren't they doing that? Or running back-to-back 50-mile runs without aid stations and sugar to fucking fuel them. Like they're just running in nature because it's needed. Like why, all of these things and is technology really getting us there? So I think that's, a big download for you. But
so a lot of people probably heard you say all those things and all they heard was you breathe and you get all these benefits and they're thinking, so they heard you say, you breathe and you get all these benefits, but I breathe all day long. I've been breathing my whole life, ideally.
Yes.
So, like, what are you talking about? You mentioned Wim Hof breathing, but how is that different than the breathing that I've always done my whole life?
Well, it's a hyperventilating technique. So Wim Hof's breathing is a hyperventilation technique. Hyperventilation is defined as a negative CO2 environment. That's it. So that could be holotropic, or that could be Wim Hof, or that could be fucking whatever Hoist Gracie's doing. Right. Because Hoist Gracie was doing this stuff 30 years ago as well. I had a conversation with him about it. But it's more or less take a big inhale, let the exhale go, and repeat that fairly quickly. And you can go faster or you can go a little slower. But you're going to get to a negative CO2 environment, which you're going to start to feel euphoric, which is that place where those chemicals are starting to dump in. And that feeling is where a lot of people are chasing. And feeling is understanding. And it's like, oh, shit, I can feel good. And then after you do it, you're like, wow, I feel charged right now. Well, you are.
and that's not just not necessarily mildly euphoric. Some people get to a pretty intensely euphoric state, if I'm not mistaken.
Very true. And the theory is that, so from a chemical standpoint, melatonin minus CO2 equals DMT in the human body. So if we've got melatonin present and we go into a negative CO2 environment, you may just trip the fuck out on your own supply. And I think it has a lot of it to raising the pH of the body and getting that pineal gland really exposed and allowing stuff like that to happen. But I do believe that is the state, and plenty of us, especially here, have experienced that as well.
What do you see as the benefits of doing this? So someone's listening to this, but it sounds like it might be fun, achieving euphoria. Some people
not.
I would say
not my brother.
I would say a lot of people just like
Aaron.
They're like why would I want to go after euphoria? Like, and I'm like, why wouldn't you? And, but but there's also some other benefit. What are the benefits to a euphoric state, like, and having that experience? And what are the benefits to
consciousness?
Yeah,
I think that for me it comes down to consciousness, and as hippy dippy as you want to make that, I take that out of the hippy dippy, I think. And I've been able to connect that into what human performance, like what's going on around us right now. These people are fighting, they're doing their stuff, and it's like, okay, how do I make them more aware of what their breathing is and what's going on with that? And that is what consciousness is. And if we can just open that layer of the onion up, which is basically that dirty, ugly layer of the onion, and just go, crack, here we go. Okay, here's where you're at, and now you're conscious of your breathing. What else are you aware of? And that's where we start to become aware of our own behavior and things like that. And that's why people like an Eckhart Tolle or a Deepak Chopra or all these, very, big spiritual leaders, they all talk about breathing. It's why yoga has talked about pranayama for thousands of years. It's just breath practice, right? Well, you're conscious and you're becoming aware. And I think that's that's a very enlightening thing, regardless of being an athlete or being a yogi. Yeah. And, back to Doug's question is, so we breathe all day. And I mean, Bisbing was in here the other day and he's like, yeah, breathing's easy, man. I do it every day. It's like, yeah, you do. And you're only taking in 15% of the air that you are capable of.
Yeah.
And that is what we're doing.
One of the things I found interesting, I was hang out with this woman reached out to me. She's a neuroscientist, wanted to know more about how I say raising your awareness, because I'm in the practice of trying to raise my awareness all the time.
Yes, you are.
I think everybody here is.
Yes.
And she was wanting to know, like, what are the practical benefits of that? What are like the physical performance benefits of that? And for me, I was like, I really can't tell you. It's something that, like, once it's experienced, once you go to a place and you do really deep holotropic breathing or something like that, and you go and you peel those layers back, you go, what is it that you're aware of that you might need to look at? And then you look at that thing, and then you deal with it, and then now everything in life gets easier.
Yeah.
Like, that's performance enhancing.
Yes.
Like, you now don't have something blocking you from doing the things you know you should be doing anyway. I think the majority of athletes are their struggle has not to do with I'm not on the right training program, or I'm not, am I counting my macros properly, or this or that. Is like, why is it that training and watching what you eat is difficult? And that's where the awareness piece comes in. And all of a sudden, people have that increased awareness, and everything they knew they were supposed to be doing for a decade now becomes easier overnight because they had maybe a holotropic experience.
Yes. And for me, it really came down to, as a kid, I was pretty agnostic. I was violent. I did not like authority whatsoever. I still don't. I'm not violent anymore. At least I don't express myself in that way. That doesn't mean that violent stuff can't arise in me. And this is what I become aware of. So anger has, and anybody who's followed me long enough has seen where I've gotten pretty angry about stuff and reactive about things. And it's like, yeah, I created this methodology and people talk shit, and I got up and said, go fuck yourself. Right. And as okay as that may be, I'm not necessarily totally okay with that. And the deeper layers of where I got with that was, if what I'm doing is supposed to create an outlet for that anger, yet the anger is still present, what was the point of the outlet? And this is where we start to look at performance and human performance and athletes and elite athletes. And you can take MMA athletes, for instance, and I've watched this with MMA as I have with CrossFit, is we have people who are living in this no more different of an addictive cycle than chemical warfare of what drugs do. It's the exact same thing. And you've got people who are repeating the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, expecting to have themselves enlightened to some degree. And I am only speaking from personal experience right now. And then having conversations with other professional athletes that might be here, that, and them being able to relate to that and saying, oh, shit, yeah, I was experiencing this too. And it's like we start to see that we're using something to try and get somewhere and deal with something, but we're not actually dealing with that. And this actually goes even far deeper with the breathing stuff, because what I've picked up on is people who are huffing and puffing all day long and trying to get high on their own supply, or, hey, I'm doing Tomo meditation. Well, it just so happens that the reason these guys are doing Tomo meditation is because they're getting an incredible amount of serotonin released in the system, and they can give themselves self-orgasms. And so without jerking off or without having sex, they're actually having an orgasm, and this is why they're doing this. And so there's really, we're seeing no difference in the Buddhist who is enlightened, per se, and the athlete who's chasing something, or the drug addict who's doing something. And we're correlating this human deal.
One's exogenous, so one's seeking it from the outside, and another person is seeking it from within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is where that starts to really open up, and it becomes apparent of, when I was doing a lot of ultra running, people were like, what are you running from, man? Like, fuck, that's a lot of running. And I'm like, why do they keep fucking asking me what I'm running from? Like, I'm not running from anything, And it's like, and then you figure out, oh, wow, I get it. Like,
your friends might be able to see something.
6 hours into this shit, I'm in this place where I finally wanted to get to let go of all the shit that was going on. But why can't I do that just sitting here, or just being present, or just doing that? And I think that's what it really comes down to, because if we're coming in to train to compete at something and yet that competition isn't fulfilling what's going on, what the fuck is the point of competing for it if you're not getting any better? So the way that we've always, like Starrett and I've really looked at performance is through a movement practice. And it's like, hey, okay, great. You could do the Ido Portal thing, which is phenomenal. And Ido Portal is probably the greatest mover we know of, right? But that requires 4 hours a day of being in the gym. What does that do for you as a human being? And that's where the real substance of this comes in. And I'm not knocking down Ido Portal. Yeah. I think he's incredible at what he does. He's probably far more enlightened than I am.
Well, I think a lot of his messages is what are you doing with your movement?
Exactly.
Whereas there's a lot of people that are moving for an hour, and that's where it's limited. Is
yes.
The hour in the gym. And one of the things that I've seen him be a proponent for is get out and do something else too.
Of course.
Like use it for something.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that is what it should be. But it's like, are we going into train for points or time, or are we going in to train for position and understanding that position and why we're utilizing that position and these shapes that we make all day long? And I have back pain, or I have knee pain, or I have hip pain, and it's like I'm very aware of where injury comes from, and that is through movement. It's not through intensity, it's not through volume, it's not through load. You can lift as much as you want, you can go as hard as you want, or you can go as long as you want. Those are just variables. Those are just catalysts in exposing the weakness in the movement. And so that's kind of the process of all this. And it just so happens that the breathing stuff really gets people to go, oh, shit, there's more to all this.
So, sorry, let me see if I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yeah.
When you were 6 hours into those runs or whatever, you got that state of where you wanted to be emotionally and you could let go. And you're saying you saw that, you're seeing that now, or you saw that in CrossFit, where that's why people wanted to leave the gym feeling wrecked every time. Because they could get that emotional release. Or that's why you want to fight or you want to spar all the time, because you get that same emotional, I'm here. But the problem was that wasn't solving the core issue. And you feel like the breathing can get you to that same physical space or emotional space without all the physical damage, so that when you go back to the physical practice, you can focus on quality instead of just getting to that emotional release.
That's a hell of a breakdown.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
And I'm out. Peace. Next week.
Well done, Doc. Yeah. No, but it's not that the CrossFitters are doing that. It's this CrossFitter did that. Yeah, like, this is what I experienced. And then, by the way, I had a few conversations with some people around the area that just so happen to be elite. And, they're more elite than I. And, it's, wow, oh, it's the same thing. And, oh, by the way, the behavior patterns are the same. And, by the way, behavior is everything. Intention is nothing. So, you could intend to be such a nice guy and then blah, you fucking hit somebody, or, just whatever. Somebody makes you react in a specific way and your behavior elicits something completely different. So it's behavior that really defines us. And I think that when we can really be aware of our own behavior or even our own emotions, like if you can just step back for a second and be like, why am I having this reaction? This emotional response to what this guy's saying or what this gal just did. Why am I having, and if you, for me, when I look deep enough, wow, we are but reflections of ourselves, aren't we? and I'm not trying to be, I'm not a hippie. I definitely am not. I haven't even
sound you sounded pretty hippie.
I haven't even been to Burning Man.
Oh,
so but this stuff I think is very important, because I've been trying to talk about this for 15 fucking years. And I'm finally at a place where, holy crap, it makes sense now. Now this is what we're trying to break through, is getting people conscious of what it is they're doing. Not just, oh, I just got to go move and I got to work. I got to get on a treadmill and go run, or I got to go run 400-meter repeats, or I've got to do this CrossFit endurance thing or this power speed endurance thing. It's not, no. You don't have to. There's this thing called fucking nature that'll provide for you if you pay attention to it. And by the way, going out in nature, you're going to work just as hard, if not harder, and survival will be real.
Yeah.
Training in the gym ain't going to be real. And that's where I think we've really differentiated ourselves. And that's kind of the stuff we're going to be talking about with the book, is where it's, hey, is what we actually are doing with technology and what we're doing getting us to our real selves, and do people really know what they're doing with technology? And we just don't believe they do.
Are you looking at when you look at technology and health and wellness? Are you looking at a potential integration? Do we need to be looking back and then integrating with what's happening? Or are you talking about maybe we should step away from technology altogether?
For you want to go?
No, you go, and I'll finish any errors you make.
Yes.
Just playing.
This is why he was brought into the book. I'm I don't think we can step away from technology at this point. And if you do step away from technology, you're fucked. But it creates quite the dependence. It's kind of like drugs. It's, hey, drugs have a use to a large degree, and drugs can be an amazing thing. And they've actually made it so that we, as a species, have survived a lot of shit we probably shouldn't have.
Yep.
Which I don't know. There's some deeper layers there that I won't get into because I'll probably get a lot of hate on that. But I'm just waiting for the bottleneck to occur, and it's gonna come. But to some degree, it will. But if you don't stay with the technological curve of what's happening and what's going on, you're going to be left behind and in the dark and not know what's going on. But if you're not using the technology to do what it is the lion and the fucking antelope do so naturally, then what was the purpose?
Yeah, you can just get lost down that hole really quickly. And you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of emotional energy on things that really might not matter that much.
Yeah.
And so you can miss some really big things. And what will happen eventually is you're going to break, the system's going to break, or more than likely, you're going to give up.
Yes.
You're going to be like, well, I spent all this time, I've done all this, and I marked my heart rate, and I had this done, and this done, and this done. And 3 years later, I'm worse than I was before, and I'm hurt, and I'm tired of this, and I'm out. And you're like, okay, now, were we effectively using the technology? So what we're going to be talking about really is not at all stepping away from it. It is really trying to identify what is that really telling you, and do you understand what that means, and is that actually tactical for you? And then let's make a decision of, I know that's available, but do I need that?
For me, a lot of technology around training specifically and nutrition and stuff like that. Even like a piece of technology might be being able to weigh your food or something like that. Because I see it as a really good calibration tool.
Sure.
Something to be used on
Yeah.
occasion. Heart rate, there's just a ton of things out there where we can measure something that's going on in our body. For me, I like to use it as a calibration tool, as in I look at the numbers, I kind of look at what I might be aiming for, and then how does that make me feel? Like correlating that to a feeling allows me to be more in touch with what's happening with me in every moment versus only the touch points in which I'm interacting with technology, because I want to use technology to make me more free and capable, and I don't want to use it to be more reliant. Like, I can watch a person who's reliant on Facebook for dopamine because they're checking it every 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, my dopamine's low. I need to see if anyone liked my post.
Right.
Well,
that's this as a creative yourself. But what's one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're in a period of creativity? Like seeking other input.
Right.
Because then you're like, oh, God, I'm going to go look at that, and then that. And then you're all off in tangent. When you see that flow, when you get into flow, you need to get the hell away from those things and then let it go. But if you continue to seek external stimuli, then it's blocking the actual flow that you're in.
Right.
And so that takes away your creativity of saying, actually, no, I'm going to go run today. Why? I just feel like running. Or I'm going to go move today. Or I'm going to lift heavy. Or I'm going to do this today.
Yes.
This is the physical practice I want. But my sheet says off day. Well, I don't care. What are you feeling? Well, if you've detached from that sensation of feeling, then now you're stuck in really weird choices for programming or for movement or whatever you're going to do, instead of being able to use that as calibration or awareness to say, yeah, no, actually, I feel like going to get another session in. I trained this morning, but I still feel, let's go here.
Yeah, and the way I say is, if somebody is, say typical American, sedentary, well, we're all trained to be sedentary, 8 hours a day in a classroom, sit at a desk, stand in line, so on and so forth. You're trained to be sedentary. So now we have to retrain you how to move. And so we're now having to use technology to help get you moving well again. So for me, a lot of it is, I was talking to Doug about this a little bit on the way over here, is like there's like a remembering. So like I spend a lot of time now remembering what things were supposed to feel like. And so what we're talking about is, what am I connected to? Am I connected to like source, or am I connected to like this external thing that was normalized across a big population of physiologies that is now going to say, we want to try to make you as normal as possible, by the average of the of all these people, we
Yeah.
know your heart rate should be here.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to try and fit you in this box instead of you listening to like what it is that you were meant to do when you arrived.
Yeah.
If it wasn't hippie enough as earlier, what you took
No.
it there.
No. I think that's spot on. But it's even coming back to your heart rate analogy, or I think these are there's two really interesting things that we're gonna two things of many that we'll point out. But it's like the heart rate thing. Like, hey, why are you looking at your heart rate? Well, my aerobic threshold or my zones or my lactate threshold or these things, and it's like, okay, can you feel that? Do you feel the shift in your aerobic threshold? Do you feel the breath change? Do you feel the other breath change? Do you feel the next breath change? Do you feel the acidity of the blood? Do you feel those things changing?
Yeah.
And if you don't feel those things changing, then the technology has become superfluous.
Yeah.
Or it's just a buddy of mine who owns a gym on the East Coast had they had a workout, and it had running in it. And he was participating in it. And one of the students looked at him and goes, hey, where are your running shoes? And he was in Vans. And he's like, I don't need running shoes. My feet work perfectly fucking fine. Thank you. And I'm like, that's it. That's absolutely it. We've been convinced that you actually need a specific shoe in order to go do something, and you don't. And so now you've got powerlifters back squatting or squatting in weightlifting shoes and blowing patellar tendons off at squatting 1,000 pounds. And, it's not happening all over the place, but it is happening. And I'm watching guys who squat a lot of weight in Olympic weightlifting shoes with a lot of fucking problems going on as they squat.
And you're definitely not saying Olympic lifting shoes are bad.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, so the
Olympic
technology's not bad.
Weightlifting shoes are actually needed if you're going to fucking catch heavy weight in the bottom of something, whether on a front rack or over your head.
Yeah.
It's an important thing to have.
Yeah.
But you better understand that if you're going to be in Olympic weightlifting shoes, working out in Olympic weightlifting shoes for quite some time, you're going to need to work on that dorsiflexion a lot, because you're shortening that range of motion, and therefore up that chain, you are going to create compensation.
Yeah. You had a post. It was you or Kelly, but Kelly was doing it. You were on an Aerodyne bike and you were doing intervals or something, and the workout was effectively, and you can correct this, something like how long can you go or how many of these can you do until you break position, right? So I took that as inspiration, and we did that at home with Natasha. And she's elbows are out, like things are here, just every bad position possible. Next, and she's going along, and I'm like, hey, I explained to her again. No, the goal is not time. The goal is not distance. The goal is how long in perfect position. She's like, got it. Gets back on. And I'm like, damn it. So I use technology. I pull out my phone. I videotape her when she doesn't see it. I show it to her again. She's like, oh.
Yeah.
The next rep, she goes, boom, and she's up, and she's perfect. And she didn't know what to feel. She didn't know what the feeling was supposed to be like. So to your point earlier, she was able to calibrate very quickly. And then we take the phone away. I don't have to put an EMG sensor on her to let her know, like, okay, have a laser go off every time your shoulder moves forward. She immediately felt it. She got about 20 seconds in and goes, damn it, I lost it. Boom, corrects herself. Damn it, I lost it. And then the comment of the century, which, like, shocking. She goes, that last one was easier. Weird, right? When you can actually breathe, the whole thing is a whole lot easier.
Breathe, or you're in position for your body weight to be connected. And it was Starrett going from 300 to 1,300 watts.
That's what
and
it was.
Moving up 100 watts every 5 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And so position didn't change, and he started breathing to begin. He started, instead of the breath following the work, he's going, and he didn't need to do that, because metabolically he wasn't at that place, but he started doing it, and so he got ahead of where the acidity is going to get and maintain position. And people are like, well, A, why is he breathing like that to start? And B, shouldn't position change? No, it should never change, no matter what's happening. And that's the problem that we think. And that's where we drift off into, like, one of the fights I had with running is, there's such a difference between sprinters and long-distance runners. Really? I've posted videos of Hailey Gebrselassie and Usain Bolt side by side running in slow motion, and they run exactly the same to me. There's some minute differences because of speed, but other than that, they're doing everything the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the breathing practices often are, especially in the case of Wim Hof, they're associated with some of the cold water or ice immersion stuff. Like, what's the connection there?
Let's take a break real quick and then do the talk about heat and ice. I think it'll be nice.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
We're going to go through the basic setup on a bench press. Now, I'm not going to claim this setup. Dave Tate and Casey Williams have reorganized my bench from the ground up. They have a video out on it. I'm going to let you guys know how it worked for me and how I'm going to teach these guys. So we're going to do a 4-point stance. 4 points of our body are going to be in contact with the floor and the bench at all times. We got our feet, our butt, our upper back, and our head. That's going to be the most efficient and most stable position to be in to transfer force from the floor into the bench, into the bar. Now, you may be asking why I keep saying into the bench. From a very basic physics standpoint, you are not pushing the force into that bar. The amount of force you push into the bench allows the bar to go up from you. So you want to drive as much force as you can into the bench to allow the weight to go up. And this is the most efficient way that I have been taught how to do it. All right, so I'm going to have you lay down on the bench to set up. First, I'm going to have you put your hands on the frame of the bench. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our foot position so that we can get into the proper back position. So I'm going to have his feet further out so that his knee is below his hip. This is going to allow us to drive back into the bench. This is going to be similar to squatting. You're going to make the same motion. So he is now going to squeeze his glutes and externally rotate his knees outward, which is coming from his glutes and his hips. This is going to produce the most amount of force, recruiting the most amount of muscle, giving the most amount of stability, which is going to move the most amount of weight. His next is he's going to drive himself up into the bench. You will feel your traps roll up and below you. When this happens, he's going to have an arch in his back. I should be able to pass my hand through his lower back. Now, before we talked about that bridge structure. This is a stable structure in the human anatomy. He is now he is in an extreme stable position so that if I walk up to him and he's benching, he's barely gonna shake and move because he is externally rotated, he's fired, and he is braced throughout his whole body. After he has his foot position locked in, his back is locked in, upper and lower, now we're gonna move to his hand position on the bar. He's locked in everywhere else on his body, now we're gonna get him locked into the bar. So after you're locked in, I want you to keep driving into that bench, back towards me. Now you can grab the bar. This whole time, he's not stopping with his leg pressure and his leg drive. That stays activated during his walkout, during his eccentric, during his pause or his isometric, all the way back up on his concentric. So, tension in the legs, squeezing your lats, nice and tight. You're pulling the bar apart, lift off, keep that tension in your legs, walk it out. We're gonna take a big breath up top with our balloon, and we're gonna reach our chest up to meet the bar. Good, go again. This whole time he's driving with his legs back towards me, keeping that force from the floor, going into the bench, which is going into the bar. Good.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, notice like the order of operations, like he got tight before he put his hands on the bar. A lot of people will put their hands on the bar, then try to get tight.
That's a huge, huge point that Alex just made. Why is that significant?
Well, I mean, if you try to get tight with your hands on the bar, you're probably going to be in the wrong position anyways.
On top of that, now this goes to squatting and deadlifting. If you try and reset or become tight with an external load on you, it won't be as set solid as if you do it before you lift the weight out.
Because you can't do that in a regular day.
And that's the difference between like training and competing.
Yeah.
You'll never ever be able to mimic it, and you just won't. You can't do it. And it's kind of like you typically wouldn't squat, bench, and deadlift all on the same day.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't do that because that's not conducive to pushing yourself to like focus in on that movement.
Right.
You can squat and deadlift.
One of the the Wim Hof stuff is actually fairly easy to do, and you know he's got free stuff on his website that you can go through, and just go to wimhof.com. That is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
to take that to another level, it would be something like, let's understand lung capacity. Let's understand performance around this, because no athletes I know that are, other than free divers, are actually using apnea training or doing anything of the sort. And they should be, because it really gives you a gross understanding of how much like CO2 retention you have, how much lung capacity you actually have, and you can actually start to create more room. So getting access to that diaphragm and understanding that. So that was one of the reasons I worked with Training Master so long, was just to kind of get people to understand using the diaphragm.
It's a mechanics thing.
Yeah, it is.
I think this is where people get a little mixed up, and we even talked about it in the first half of the show was mostly physiologically based. We didn't really get into mechanics.
Yeah, and the mechanics of it. So your diaphragm actually, which sits underneath your rib cage, like so up in here. If I hook my fingers in, and it feels weird, right? If you can get in there and dump all your air, you can get up in there and you can start to feel that diaphragm. That is your guiding force for breath control and breathing. And most athletes that I've run into aren't actually using their diaphragm at all.
Right.
And because they're in a shitty position. So if you're in a terrible position, meaning if I'm flexed or if I'm overextended, you don't have access to that. You're going to be a chest breather most likely. So one of the things we do is we take the 12th rib just below it, soft tissue, wrap the hands around so you're around that kind of 12th rib on the side, and then your hands are around your gut in front. You just squeeze. And now let your gut pushing your hands out initiate the breath. So it's and that dictates how your breath falls in. So we'll typically work from a seated position, having people do that for a number of breaths, like 10, 20, whatever. Then we'll go into some apnea training, which is like a 1-4-2 split. So it's an easy split of, if, let's just say my inhale was 1 second, my breath hold would be 4 seconds, my exhale would be 2 seconds. Everybody's going to be much higher than that. So think about 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. So if I inhale for 5 seconds, and then I hold for 20 seconds, and then I exhale for 10 seconds, and I repeat that process. And that is a great technique for down regulation and getting lung capacity. And so doing that, something like that, prior to actually doing any training, so that you can not only actually calm yourself the fuck down, but get the lungs, get the rib cage open, get the gut open, get everything open so that you're filling with air and you're dumping all the air. You're actually setting yourself up for a better performance, correct?
Yeah, you are.
So a lot of people might feel that that's counterintuitive, that you would want to down-regulate before you train as opposed to up-regulate. You might.
That's the same reason I take C4.
You would tend to think, you would tend to think that you would want to down-regulate after training or before you went to bed or something like that. So so why down-regulate before training?
Well, we down-regulate, get yourself calm, ready to do what you're going to do. Then we can up-regulate with something like Wim Hof, where we're going to do the hyperventilating technique for maybe 30 breaths or 50 or 80 breaths or a couple rounds without doing long, extensive breath holds. And that's kind of where I've taken this, where we'll do about 3 minutes of the hyperventilation technique, where it's just 3 minutes of that. And you're getting up and up and up and up. And so CO2 lowers, O2 kind of raises as a result of that CO2 lowering. So you'll even see it on the oxygen saturation levels if you put a pulse oximeter on, and it gets up to about 100. It'll get up to 100%, and you will be charged, and you will have a lot of oxygen going on, and you'll also have started a sympathetic state, and then starting to warm up and actually being more aware of what's going on. And so that's kind of the driver into what we'll do. I won't necessarily just do apnea then train. I will use apnea at night regularly for down regulation. But one of those things, and coming back to the ice, is the ice is a lot like training, or like doing the breathing to a sympathetic state. Not necessarily the apnea, but something like a Wim Hof or a hyperventilation technique. That's a sympathetic state. That is literally putting you into that stress state. It's your body. You have a choice at that point when it's done to down-regulate yourself. And so I like to actually do cold showers or ice baths before bed. So that's almost like counterintuitive, because everybody goes, oh, yeah, when I do ice baths or a cold shower, I feel more awake. Yes, you do, because you're in a sympathetic state.
I started doing the cold shower. I went to the Bulletproof conference.
Yes.
And Kelly was on stage, and he talked about the cold shower before bed. And I'd been doing it in the morning where I jump in the ocean where it's plenty cold right now. But then I was like, oh, I was the intuitive thought for me was a hot bath or something like that would help mellow out before bed. I started doing the cold shower before bed and started sleeping like a baby.
Weird.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Hey, your body paid attention. You allowed you. So that whole thing with, hey, like the antelope and the lion concept, right? Well, if we go to work all day, we know the difference from the head up, or the shoulders up, between work and working out. The body doesn't. So the body doesn't know the difference between the stress, and the body will react over time. And this is where we start to see people chime in about adrenal fatigue, things like that, because it's a consistent peppering of, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I crank all day, and then I go CrossFit all night. And then, or
a couple of those.
Yeah, well, regardless, or I go run. Here, take CrossFit out of the equation. This is what I saw. I go run 5-7 miles.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't know the difference between those two things, and so what's occurring is you're just fucking smashing yourself, and then you try and down-regulate, and sure, you might be sleeping well for some time, but then all of a sudden, you either A, are getting a sleeping disorder, or B, you're not recovering. And you're starting to pick up on my tissue's not rebounding. My things, like all this stuff, I'm in more pain. I have IT band stuff. I have fucking quad stuff, or I have knee stuff. And it's like, yeah, you've got stuff because you're not paying attention to that rebound effect of, if I go do ice before bed, what's going to happen after that rise up? Well, it should drop out. And if I don't let that drop out, then I'm literally screwing myself. And so it's a choice to allow yourself to down-regulate after that and calm down. And if you can train that response, it's just like training a bench press or a back squat.
You think that explains a lot of why we can't really handle that much working out?
Yes.
Compared to what our normal physiology should be able to do?
I 100%. Here, take your dog. Why can your dog fucking outrun? Okay, granted, they're quadruped, but
Ghostface can't run anything.
Okay, well,
Gnocchi can, but not Ghostface.
Both my dogs could outrun me any day of the week. They actually pull me on a skateboard, so they're pulling 190 pounds around for a mile at like a 5-minute pace. They're hauling ass, dude. And then they go, and as soon as we get back, they go and crash.
Now, Ghostface has that part down.
Good.
He's got that part down. He down-regulates all day.
You got the laziest dog ever.
But that's one of the best dog names of all time, by the way.
Ghostface
Your
Killer?
dog's the Ghostface Killer.
Yeah, it's great. He
So-
down-regulates like crazy.
They know how to shut it down, and it's not a constant, I'm on the move, I got to do this, I got to do that. No. And it's not important. We think what's important is, I've got to start a business, I've got to crank at the business, I got to be on the computer all day, I got to fucking answer emails, I got to do this, I got to do that. And no, you fucking don't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
You do not.
You hear that? I'm not doing this stuff anymore. Done.
Hey,
Brian said.
No.
Brian, you don't get to talk
To
about
the
it anymore.
degree,
Brian, you're off the show.
to the
We're not airing
degree that it doesn't make you happy.
Right.
Right.
And that's where this all fucking comes around full circle. Is it's like, oh, so if I'm getting upset when I'm doing this, why am I doing it? And because all I'm doing is just setting myself off. And if the training makes you upset when you go in and train in the gym and you're freaking out and throwing a spastic fucking because either your friend time didn't drop or your mile time isn't it's like, dude,
Never seen that before.
never seen a chick throwing a tantrum in a fucking gym, about not pulling weight or doing something. I mean, I watch it every week when I'm over at,
Oh yeah.
This
Yeah.
gym we work out of too, and it's like, I don't get, why are we not paying attention? Why is this fun? It's not fun. That's not fun. That is not fun. And there's nothing wrong with answering emails and doing customer service and doing that stuff if that's what you're enjoying doing. But be aware of whether the enjoyment begins and where it ends. And that's the process. And it's like, look, if I'm going to bury myself all day at work, don't expect to go perform real well in a workout. And be aware of what you're doing, and maybe just do some ice and some heat so that you can down-regulate or up-regulate and then be able to down-regulate yourself. And, it's like hey, should I be doing a sauna or jacuzzi before I go to bed? And it's like, might not be the best thing because of what happens as an impact of that. And that's like a big stressor. And it's a very hard stressor to do. And it's like, that's why we end on cold when we do heat, is we close down the pores, we uplift the system, and we go, okay, time to come back up. And Starrett and I had a lot of talking going on about this, which is why he has began doing the cold before bed.
So you use the cold before bed to shut down, but I don't know if you're playing with this anymore, but I know you used to do the cold right before training too.
Yes.
You still do that?
Yeah,
Why?
I'll do that from time to time.
Why?
Yeah. Get up.
Same reason. Because
Yeah.
the cold allows you to go wherever you want,
Dude,
right?
she went and did a 30-minute time trial on the skier after doing a 5-minute ice bath. It took her almost 10 minutes to get her heart rate to like 120.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
She warmed up and did all that, and then went and got in the ice for 5 minutes, and then literally came and started the time trial. And she was like, at 5 minutes, she's like, dude, my heart rate is at 105. And I'm like, holy crap, how interesting is that?
Huh.
And I'm not saying anybody should go out and start doing that. But
Ice bath,
Wim,
1 rep max deadlifts.
yeah,
Got
well,
it. Yeah.
Wim has literally boasted about stuff like that. You want to
Yeah.
PR something? Go do an ice bath before you go do it. You'll PR. Or I'm just like, hey, why don't you just go hyperventilate for 3 minutes and then go snatch? And I have seen it time and time and time again where people are PRing things because they're doing some breathing right before they do something and they set themselves up for success.
Yeah. We're not telling you to do it, but if you do it, let us know what happens.
Only if it worked.
Oh, if it doesn't work, I want to hear about it too.
Yeah.
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 And-
Especially if you break yourself. I totally want to hear about it.
Yes.
yeah, so I think
Video.
the ice
preferred.
is an interesting thing
Didn't happen.
because I think it's similar to the training mask. A lot of people misunderstood the application of the training mask. And now I've also heard people talk about, the ice thing might be overused because they're talking about it in the context of inflammation.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is this is in the context of downregulating the nervous system.
Yes. You want to reset your nervous system? Do an ice bath. And there's a lot of people. So, and then there's the cryo thing. And it's like, which is very interesting. And I get it. And it actually can be cheaper than the ice thing. But because I buy ice to do this stuff,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
probably
It's
costs around
expensive.
$30. And I guess cryo's like 25 or something.
The
I don't
cryo
know.
thing where people say they're in this tank and it's like 250 degrees below zero,
Yes.
that type of thing?
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? I don't know much about it.
Well, one, there's nothing in nature that's that cold. So from a genetic standpoint, just my brain says, okay, we aren't even coded to deal with that. So how are we going to deal with that? That's a superficial thing, which is also why when you go do cryo, and everybody who does cryo will understand this, you get out of the cryo and you don't have to go warm up because you'll warm up in
Yep.
a few minutes,
I've done it.
Instantly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I've done it.
And that's what happens,
Yeah,
right?
I rolled right.
Several times.
It was counterintuitive for me. I was working with somebody, and they was John from On It. He was like, "Hop in the cryo, and then we'll get training." I was like, "Why? Oh, all right, like you're
Yeah.
the coach today."
Yeah.
And I did it, and I was like, "I feel really good as soon as I started."
And you're still getting a lot of the things that are set off from a stressor, but here's where there's work that needs to be done. I could take somebody who's been doing cryo and stick them in a 3-minute ice bath, and they're going to be like, "Oh shit, I'm getting hypothermic now." Like,
I did notice the same. Like when I got in there were other people doing it, and they were like, "Oh my god!" I got in there, I was like, "All right,
And
no
you've
big
done
deal,"
ice?
because I've been doing ice. Like
Yeah.
I'd been doing ice, or at least just even cold showers.
Mhm.
So it wasn't a shock to me. But after doing it, because it's only 3 minutes, and it did feel like superficial.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like it would transfer over. I'm not.
yeah,
I'm not
something
doing
that
any research
cold
myself
from
on
a
it, but-
superficial perspective is just going to shut down capillaries and stuff so quickly that it's like, okay, so I'm just going to literally keep core warm and I'm fine.
But it's working for people. Like that's the thing is,
You can
people
still
are finding
get
benefits
you
out of
can
it,
still
so-
get hormonal and neurotransmission response out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So-
that's just a bit early. They need, they're just going to have more time. I'm sure they're going to find some benefits, and I'm sure some have. But yeah, so it's not. I don't
Hey,
think any of you were saying it's bad.
Feeling is understanding. So
It's-
if you feel great doing it, by all means,
Yeah.
you should keep doing it.
Yeah, not saying anything against it. It's just this is a different tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not
exactly.
the same thing.
I wanted to
No.
add a couple of research points to what you said earlier about the negative aspect of the ice.
Yeah.
where where everyone was saying like, well, don't use it for this, don't use it for this. Well, if you look at the research on hypertrophy, that actually looks like it's fairly clear where if you're trying to gain muscle mass, you probably don't want to ice the muscle immediately after training. That looks like that blocks inflammation, and that actually resultingly blocks hypertrophy. So I wouldn't, if you're trying to gain muscle mass, I wouldn't finish your training sessions and then do a bunch of ice bath work. Probably not a good idea. It looks like you need to wait 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 8 hours, or maybe not the day at all.
I've heard the same argument for anti-inflammatories, right? Ibuprofen and whatnot.
Exactly. Same thing. But a new paper just came out, and I think I sent you this one, that showed it actually was effective at significantly increasing mitochondrial density and function. So maybe if you're using it,
and I put that out. Yeah.
Immediately after intervals, with the goal of trying to get better endurance, perhaps it is beneficial.
Right.
So it's not that this stuff is good or bad for you, and we don't necessarily know exactly what the stuff is. And so at this point, what I'd say is keep your eye on the research.
Yeah.
But then listen to the people who are doing it every day and say, hey, look, I'm tinkering, and I think this is what I'm seeing here, because that's the best we have right now.
Yeah. I find a lot of people say something works or doesn't work, and they don't actually know what the outcome of the tool is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, there's something that the tool is supposed to be used for, and there's a specific way you're supposed to use the tool for a very specific outcome. And if you don't know what the outcome is supposed to be and how to use the tool, then of course it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, that's the most frustrating question. I'll get a tweet. Does this thing work? I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
Like, does creatine work? I don't know. What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, even the hypertrophy thing begs to answer the question that if, like, hey, are you looking from a vanity standpoint, or are you looking for a life standpoint? Because if it's vanity, by all means, you probably shouldn't be doing any ice, because you got to be big and you got to be bulk. You got to put on that muscle size, right?
that explains why I've been.
But from a
losing weight.
mitochondrial perspective, I mean, as we know, mitochondrial biogenesis is a great thing, and the more mitochondria you have, the healthier you actually are. So that may weigh in for you over the other one.
Right.
But by all means, you shouldn't do that. But I like to actually do things like I'll train, then get in the sauna. And so we're stimulating that whole heat shock protein thing and stressing the system even further after it's heated up. And whether it's squatting or whether it's doing some interval work, I'll literally get in the sauna and have the sauna running so that I can do that and stress it even further.
Yeah.
And I like that.
You know what? Unfortunately, we're gonna have to shut this down soon.
Oh.
We're out of time.
We are out of time. We are scratching the surface on a lot of things.
I know.
So. The fortunate thing is we're like an hour away.
I know.
So
You're not in Tennessee anymore, and
we'll just do more shows.
You're still here for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't go
For now.
anywhere.
Spring, bro. I'm out.
All right. Well, we got to cram them in.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, to the Ruka guys for letting us
Absolutely.
record here, because this is super fucking cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
people want to find you, see what you're up to, because you're up to a lot of things that we didn't even mention.
Yeah.
Where should people follow you?
A lot of the stuff that we're talking about will be integrated from a performance perspective into the Power Speed Endurance subscription model, which is not a very expensive thing. We've got it down to like $7.99 a month, I believe, right now. So it's a very easy way to kind of figure out and start to integrate some of the stuff we're talking about. And that's where a lot of the work that I'm doing is at. With regards to just my social channels, it's at Brian Mackenzie on Twitter and at I Am Scared on Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me if you can find me.
It's
Beautiful.
a challenge. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Had a
thanks for
blast.
having me, boys.
Yep. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.